Samuel chapters 8 to 11 today, and this is still the first book of Samuel. Whether it's 1 Samuel, 1 Samuel, Samuel 1, I do not know. I've asked about this and the answer seems to be that you get a different answer from everybody. So I guess it doesn't matter, we don't care, and we're just going to... It's the first part of Samuel, we're just going to call it that. This part opens up with Samuel getting old and appointing, or trying at least, to appoint his sons as his successors and leaders of Israel. The people, however, don't seem to like this because it turns out that Samuel's sons, probably unsurprisingly, are punks, because everybody's son seems to be a punk in this. It seems like they're tied up with, they've got some corruption going on and some bribery, and people are not happy with this. So the elders of Israel come to Samuel and say, no, we don't want your sons, we want a king. Samuel goes off and has a little chat with God about this. And we've been waiting for this for ages, because way back, several books ago, there was talk of Israel going to be having a king at some stage. But I mean, clearly hundreds of years have passed in that time. And I thought that was just going to be okay. But it seems the way God puts it is he's saying to Samuel that this is not a rejection of you, it's a rejection of me. And it wasn't quite obvious that people of Israel wanting a king and a leader was a rejection of God, but it seems that God sees it as he is their king, and if they're trying to have an earthly king, then it's a rejection of him. So it's not obvious that that's really the case. I don't know. But either way, God doesn't seem to like it, but agrees to it. He says to Samuel, go and tell the people what this will entail, which is basically a ton of tax and almost sort of semi-slavery in terms of people being commandeered to go and work for the royal estate. And Samuel adds that in the future the people will cry out to God for relief from their king, but God will not listen to them. So it's God sort of clearly saying, yeah, you can have a king if you really want one, but yeah, punks for wanting one, sort of thing. So a bit odd. The people anyway, they take on board this from... Well, it says they don't listen to Samuel when he says all the bad things that are going to come from having a king. They say, no, we want a king, we're having a king. So God says, fine, right, yeah, great, you can have a king. It does seem odd, that, doesn't it? I mean, we're talking about, this is the Israelite elders talking to Samuel here. So you'd think the elders would be sort of wise people. Maybe that's decidedly naive. But, I mean, why would you be an elder unless you were wise? And they're ignoring all this warning. And it's... I guess we're setting up for the next round of trouble anyway, but there we go, probably not surprising. There's a big long load of waffle, which basically is this chap called Saul, who is a Benjaminite. Benjaminites being the ones who were nearly wiped out not that long ago. So it is noted by Saul that he is of one of the lesser tribes, or the lesser tribe. And it notes that he's a head taller than everybody else, and very, very handsome. So they just seem to have done some sort of beauty contest to pick who their king is going to be. But to be fair, he sounds okay. There's nothing obviously wrong with him, initially at least. Some of the waffle includes him becoming some sort of prophet and doing some weird stuff. But the interesting part, I think, is there's talk of the Spirit of the Lord descending on Saul a couple of times. So it's like that idea of it's not a one and done thing. It's a sort of it seems almost like a power up. It also notes this really odd thing where it says that God changes Saul's heart. It doesn't say what it changes it from and to. There doesn't seem to be any... It's not like he was a terrible person, suddenly became a good person, or was a good person, suddenly became a terrible one. At least not obvious at this stage. So I'm not sure what's happened there, but clearly some sort of stepping up and being anointed as king has done something to change Saul in some way that we're not yet clear on. I do hear Christians talk about that, actually, and people having fear of being called by God or something in the terms of what it would require them to do. I suppose in some ways that could feel like wishful thinking, because if you took from the starting assumption that all Christians are wrong, they're saying people are afraid of being called by God. It's like, well, they're not, are they? They're just reluctant to be sucked into that sort of thing. But if Christians are right, then it could possibly make sense that people do sense some sort of niggling at them, and there's a fear on what it will call them to do, that sort of thing. I said it's a really interesting idea, that one, isn't it? I think we'll have to go off and do a tangent on that at some point. I'll find some context to do it with. But I do wonder if God changing Saul's heart has something to do with that. I don't know. We'll have to find out. We then go into a sort of a weird story, and a chap called Nahash, who is an Ammonite, and he has laid siege to the town of Jabesh Gilead, which is an Israelite town. And the people of the town say to him, well, we want to make a treaty with you. And he says, no, don't want to make a treaty with you. What I want is for you to let me gouge out the right eye of everyone in the city as a disgrace to Israel, and then fine, yeah, we can make a treaty. So the people of Jabesh Gilead go, okay, well, bear with us. Send off a message to Saul, please come and help us. Saul then has the Spirit of the Lord descend upon him and gets very angry, apparently. Then raises an army of 300,000. Saul and his 300,000 soldiers go to Jabesh Gilead, kick the crap out of Nahash and massacre all his men, albeit nothing is actually said about what happens to Nahash. You expect his head lopped off or put on a pole or something, but no mention of that at all at this stage. So suffice to say, the Ammonites are done and Jabesh Gilead is saved. Saul seems is a bit of a hero and anointed officially as king, and all seemed relaxed and groovy. There's an interesting part here that's not really anything relevant to the story, because I don't particularly care that much about the story, I don't think. But it does beg the question why Nahash was just randomly coming and besieging a city and wanting to gouge everyone's eyes out. But a footnote here relates to the Dead Sea Scrolls, because in the Dead Sea Scrolls was a Samuel, some fragments of Samuel, dated from, I think, year 50 BC, so nearly 1,000, well, around about 1,000 years after this happened, so make of that what you will. But it's interesting, it contained an extra bit that wasn't in the normal bit of the Bible. And it basically just alludes to Nahash had a scrap with the Reubenites and the Gadites, gouged out a load of their eyes, and a huge number of those people then fled to Jabesh Gilead, which is why he went there. Still not clear exactly why it all started in the first place. But it's really interesting, I think, that reference to the Dead Sea Scrolls and an extra bit that wasn't in the Bible otherwise. There's definitely at least one or possibly some tangents to be done on the reliability of what's written in the Bible, how it got there, and how can you know if it's right and has it been translated 100 times, which would imply some loss of meaning, obviously. But I just found that really interesting that there's a reference to something presumably older, I guess, and then they've actually made a point of putting it back in, and it doesn't change the story in any relevant way particularly, it just adds a little bit more context, which I thought was quite interesting. But yeah, so Israel now has its first king, and in the next video we'll go on and see what he gets up to next.